The colony of New Horizon was young, barely 3 decades old. Built on the edge of charted space, it was a quiet world of farmers, engineers, and dreamers. Children played under the double suns, workers toiled in the fields, and miners dug precious ore from the mountains. They believed themselves far from the galaxy's turmoil, protected by distance and obscurity. But distance was no shield. The alien fleet arrived without warning. Sleek warships of obsidian hulls fell from the void, blotting out the light of the stars. No demands were given, no warnings broadcasted. The skies above New Horizon erupted with fire as alien bombardments rained down. Cities turned to glass. The oceans boiled. Entire forests were vaporized in seconds. The colonists had no warships, no defenses, nothing but the desperate screams of the dying echoing through comm channels. Within an hour, 100,000 souls were gone. The aliens left as swiftly as they came, leaving only ash and silence behind. The news reached Earth 3 days later. The transmission was fragmented, broken by static, but the horror was clear. A mother clutching her child as fire consumed the horizon. A pilot's final panicked cry before his shuttle disintegrated mid-air. Then, nothing. Across human space, grief spread like wildfire. But grief soon hardened into something else. Rage. On Earth, billions gathered in mourning. In orbit, the United Human Directorate convened. Admirals, generals, and leaders sat in silence as the images replayed again and again. At last, Admiral Seraphine Caldwell, commander of the Directorate Fleet, stood. Her voice was cold, unyielding. They thought us weak. They thought us fractured. They thought we would mourn, whisper, and move on. She paused, eyes burning with fury. They are wrong. Humanity will answer, not with words, not with restraint. We will answer with fire. And so, humanity moved. The call went out across every human world. Shipyards lit up with activity. Dreadnoughts, carriers, and destroyers were pulled from orbit, armed, and readied. Factories produced ammunition and war machines at a pace unseen since Earth's ancient wars. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers demanding to fight. But this was not a war of defense. It was vengeance. At the heart of it all was Armada 1, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Over 2,000 warships, ranging from nimble corvettes to titanic dreadnoughts that dwarfed mountains. At the center was the Eternal Resolve, a battleship so massive it was said, the colony of Starlight Reach was a jewel among the frontier worlds. Its towers gleamed with promise, its fields overflowed with crops, and its people believed they had carved out a haven far from the politics of the core worlds. Families laughed in the parks, miners worked the asteroid belts, and children gazed at the stars dreaming of adventure. Then, the stars turned hostile. The alien fleet descended with no herald, no explanation. Their ships were like blades of black glass, cutting through the void with merciless efficiency. The first salvo struck the orbital docks, tearing apart half-built freighters and spilling debris across the skies. Seconds later, beams of white fire lashed down, reducing entire districts to smoking craters. The people of Starlight Reach had no defense. Their colony militia was laughably small, a handful of patrol craft meant to deter pirates, not repel. An armada. The aliens swept them aside as one brushes away dust, yet in the chaos, one shuttle broke free. Its engines sputtered, its hull scorched, but inside sat a lone technician named Lyra Valen. Her eyes burned with tears as she activated the emergency beacon. Humanity. This is Starlight Reach. We are under attack. They're killing us, all. Don't forget us. Don't let this. The signal cut. The shuttle, too damaged to escape, was consumed in the inferno moments later, but the signal had already leapt across the stars. 3 days later, the recording played before the United Human Directorate on Earth. Leaders, admirals, and diplomats listened in silence as Lyra's trembling voice filled the chamber. When the transmission ended, the hall remained quiet, but it was not the silence of despair. It was the silence before a storm. Admiral Darius Holt rose first, his weathered face grim. They believe this will break us. They believe humanity will grieve and move on. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. But her words, her final plea, has bound us together. We will not move on. We will not forgive. And for the first time in centuries, the Directorate voted unanimously. Retaliation was not debated. It was demanded. Humanity answered with steel and fire. From Luna's shipyards to the forges of Titan, from the orbital rings above Mars to the factories of Alpha Centauri, the machinery of war thundered. Battleships that had slumbered in reserve were pulled into service. New weapons, unveiled only in theory until now, were mounted onto dreadnought hulls. At the heart of the retaliation stood the Titan's Wrath, humanity's most advanced warship, twice the size of any alien dreadnought, armed with experimental singularity cannons and shield matrices that could shrug off entire barrages. She was more fortress than ship. Entire fleets had been designed around her as the spearhead, and so Armada Vengeance was born. Nearly 1,000 ships under a single banner, unified not by conquest but by vengeance. Their destination was clear. The alien empire's frontier strongholds. The aliens had grown arrogant. To them, the destruction of a human colony was a demonstration, a lesson meant to remind this young species of its place. They believed the humans would bow their heads, hide behind treaties, and continue to crawl slowly into the stars. So when the alien scouts detected human ships entering their sector, they laughed. A few hundred ships, perhaps? A symbolic strike? Then the full might of Armada Vengeance arrived. The stars themselves seemed to darken as wave after wave of human warships emerged from FTL. Carriers launched swarms of fighters that blotted out the void. Cruisers spread into formation, their railguns glowing with magnetic fire. At the center, Titan's Wrath loomed, a mountain of steel, her cannons already humming with deadly power. The alien commander hesitated. This was no token retaliation. This was war. "Destroy them," he ordered. The first exchange tore the heavens apart. Alien beams carved through space, striking human shields. But the shields held. Humanity answered with railgun salvos, each slug the size of a transport ship, tearing through alien cruisers like paper. Fighters swarmed the alien flanks, overwhelming defenses, and then Titan's Wrath fired. Her main cannon unleashed a lance of compressed gravity, a weapon so powerful it bent the very fabric of space. The alien flagship never stood a chance. One moment it commanded the field, the next it was nothing but shattered fragments spinning into the abyss. The battle lasted only an hour. When it ended, the alien fleet was gone, not defeated, annihilated. Word of the slaughter spread quickly across the stars. Alien worlds whispered in fear. Other empires, once dismissive of humanity, now reevaluated with dread. But humanity was not finished. Armada Vengeance pushed deeper, targeting shipyards, supply depots, and forward bases. Every alien stronghold they encountered was reduced to rubble. Cities that had once cheered their empire's power now burned under human guns. At last, the fleet reached the alien capital itself. The defenders fought with desperation. Every ship, every cannon, every soldier was thrown into the fire. But the outcome was already written. Humanity's wrath could not be denied. Titan's Wrath led the charge, her cannons obliterating defensive platforms in single shots. Human. Destroyers swept through orbital lanes like wolves among sheep. The alien palace itself, seat of their rulers, was reduced to molten glass by orbital bombardment. The war was over. When Admiral Holt stood once more before the Directorate, his words echoed across every human world. We were struck. We were wounded. But we will never be broken. Let the galaxy remember this day. Harm one of us, face all of us. And across human space, Lyra Valen's final message was replayed. Not as a plea, but as a vow. Don't forget us. Humanity never would, and the galaxy would never dare again. The colony of Eden Prime was meant to be a symbol of peace. Nestled on a lush, vibrant world, it stood as proof that humanity could tame wild planets without conquering them. Farms thrived beside untouched forests. Cities rose in harmony with the rivers, and people spoke of Eden Prime as the crown jewel of human expansion. The galaxy watched with mild amusement. Other species, older and more powerful, regarded humanity as children, ambitious, restless, but ultimately harmless. The colony was permitted to exist because it was seen as fragile, an experiment destined to crumble. But the aliens of the Krith Dominion decided to make an example of it. They arrived in silence. No declaration of war, no ultimatum, just a fleet of blackened warships descending from orbit. The Krith believed in strength through fear. To them, humans were vermin spreading too quickly across the stars, and so Eden Prime was chosen. The bombardment lasted less than 2 hours. Towers crumbled into firestorms. Forests ignited like dry tinder. The oceans themselves boiled under thermal lances. In the end, nothing remained but ash. 1 million lives, men, women, and children, erased. The galaxy expected humanity to grieve, to retreat into silence as so many others had done when crushed by the Dominion. But humanity was different. On Earth, every screen across every city lit up with images of Eden Prime's destruction. People wept, but their tears turned quickly into something else. A fire, hotter than any plasma beam, began to burn in their chests. Across the colonies, bells tolled in unison. In orbit above Mars, soldiers stood in silence as the names of the dead echoed through the comms. On Luna's council chambers, the United Human Directorate gathered in mourning, but their grief was not passive. It was fuel. Admiral Cassandra Rourke, steel in her eyes, stood before the assembly. The Krith think us fragile. They think our unity is weakness. They believe burning one colony will shatter us. Instead, they have awakened all of humanity. For every child turned to ash, for every city scorched, we will return fire. Not in kind, greater, overwhelming. We will not answer with ashes. We will answer with fire. The vote was unanimous. Total war. Factories roared to life. On Titan, the forges hammered out dreadnought hulls night and day. On Mercury, solar arrays, powered railgun batteries larger than skyscrapers. On the asteroid colonies, miners volunteered to melt their harvest into ammunition instead of profit. Everywhere, humanity bent itself to one singular purpose: vengeance. The Krith Dominion had armies. Humanity built legions. The Krith had fleets. Humanity forged an armada, and at the heart of that armada was the Leviathan Strike Group, 3 colossal super dreadnoughts, each carrying enough firepower to annihilate continents. They were accompanied by carriers teeming with strike craft, cruisers armed with spinal cannons, and destroyers fast enough to hunt down any survivor. This was not just a fleet. It was humanity's fury given form. The Krith scoffed at the first reports. Humans building warships, preparing retaliation. To the Dominion, it was laughable. Countless races had tried to rise against them before, everyone crushed. So when their frontier fleet intercepted Leviathan Strike Group at the edge of Krith space, they expected an easy slaughter. What they met instead was fire. The battle began with silence. Thousands of human ships emerged from FTL, their engines blazing like a second dawn. Krith commanders hesitated. Never had they seen so many warships under one banner. Then humanity opened fire. Railguns unleashed storms of hypervelocity slugs, tearing through Krith shields in seconds. Plasma torpedoes burst like miniature suns, vaporizing cruisers whole. Fighter swarms blackened the void, overwhelming point defenses before carving apart enemy formations. And when the Krith tried to rally around their flagship, the super dreadnought Atlas Ascendant turned its spinal cannon upon it. One shot, one blinding beam of compressed energy. The Krith flagship split apart, its remains scattering like embers. The battle ended not with retreat, but with annihilation. Not a single Krith vessel survived, but humanity was not content with victory. For every city burned on Eden Prime. A Krith world was set ablaze. Human fleets swept across their empire like a storm of vengeance. Shipyards were obliterated, fortresses crumbled. Colonies that once raised the Dominion's banner now raised white flags as human legions descended. The Krith had believed fear would control humanity. Instead, they tasted humanity's fury. At last, the human armada reached the Krith capital. The Dominion's rulers, arrogant to the end, demanded parley. But Admiral Rourke's response was a single terrible order: fire. The skies above the Krith homeworld ignited, orbital stations shattered. Defense grids fell silent. The city spires of their capital were reduced to rubble under orbital bombardments. And when the fires finally died down, the Krith Dominion was no more. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. Civilizations that had once mocked humanity now whispered their names with awe and fear. Treaties were rewritten. Borders were redrawn. Humanity had been seen as fragile, emotional, reckless. But in that recklessness was a truth the galaxy had never faced. Humans do not forgive. Admiral Rourke's final broadcast was transmitted across the stars. Let Eden Prime be remembered. Let the Krith be remembered. If you burn one of our worlds, we will burn your empire. If you erase one of our colonies, we will erase your dominion. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. And so the message spread. Humanity, once underestimated, had become something new. A force not merely to be respected, but to be feared.